Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first quarterfinals of the $100,000 N4C main event. We are down to the top 6 players, with 2 players going directly into the semifinals, whereas the other 4 will be playing in the quarterfinals based on the results in the Swiss stage. Spawning in on the right side of the map, we will have VortiX playing as the Holy Roman Empire in blue, and on the left side, we will be opening up with the Chinese here for DeMusliM. I'll be very surprised if this map was not Altai. Now, the map pool has 7 maps, and we are playing a best of 7 over here, which means that, in theory, all 7 maps will be utilized should we go to 7 games, and it looks like indeed we're opening with Altai. HRE versus Chinese, this is not a civilization matchup that you commonly see over here, but a civilization matchup that's very appealing for many reasons. If you think about it, the HRE is a civilization that can get to Imperial Age very fast. It's a civilization that is really good at building up that early economy and then capitalizing on the power spikes. Meanwhile, for the Chinese, it takes a lot more time to build up their economy, but their late game unit composition is going to be way better. DeMusliM opening with a mill on his hunt. It looks like he's only operating with 1 scout, whereas on the other side, it looks like we also have just 1 scout for VortiX. He hasn't been super successful collecting sheep so far, and it looks like DeMusliM is going to be able to take an advantage over here. DeMusliM was the 3rd. When it comes to the Swiss stage performance, he finished the Swiss stage with 3 and 2 when it comes to sets. VortiX finished with 2 and 3, that actually puts him into the 6th spot only, thanks to the tiebreaker criteria. But we have to add the fact that the last set that he played wasn't that meaningful. So, in theory, he could have gotten the 3-2 as well if he really wanted to. The final score is 2-3, so that's what we will have to go with. But we indeed have to add that in the last round he didn't have to fight for qualification, and he had no chance of reaching the top 2. So, it is what it is. The last set that he played was less important. This being said, DeMusliM was able to deliver a slightly better performance in the Swiss stage compared to VortiX. Looks like we do have a gold mining operation over here for DeMusliM, which is the first thing to look at when you're looking at the Chinese build order. Of course, he could live off from the tax income coming from the lumber camp and the mill, but should he do that, he's going to first of all delay his feudal age, second, he's going to delay his Song dynasty. I would think that DeMusliM probably wants to play fast Song dynasty here. He's probably going to go up with the Barbican of the Sun, given the fact that his gold mine is wide open. And the story of the day, or at least the story of game number 1, could be gold mine spots. Look at the gold mine distribution here for DeMusliM. All 3 of those gold mines are wide open, very exposed, and realistically, there is only one that's at least moderately defendable here for DeMusliM. He's gonna have to potentially fight for this gold mine, but even if he's gonna have that safe, the other 2 will be very concerning. And this is something that VortiX is aware of. So VortiX will know fully well that his opponent's gold mines are quite exposed. Now, the situation isn't that great either for VortiX. If you look at his gold mines, those are also lying on the front. So early aggression could actually be a lot more important than you would sometimes see in this civilization matchup. Looks like we have a forward villager coming in here. You gotta wonder if he's trying to wall in the relics. This is something that you sometimes do with the Chinese. Chinese villagers build faster, which means that you can use them to wall in some relics, especially the ones in the middle. Those could be very appealing to wall in, because you could wall in all 3 of these. This relic on the right side you can't deny. This one you should be able to deny. So if you can start walling in the relics in the middle, you could potentially limit the access of the HRE player to relics, or at least you can slow him down accessing those quite substantially. Walls coming in on the left side, that's going to secure the gold mine at the back. Key move over there from DeMusliM, as he's going up with the Imperial Academy. On the right side, it was the Alkan Chapel coming in for VortiX. So both of the players going for the economy landmark, going up to feudal age. And there seems to be no signs of aggression so far from VortiX, who is likely going for professional scouts. Indeed, he is. So he's not expecting a lot of aggression from DeMusliM either, but that's a little risky. Chinese do have the option to start popping out military really fast, thanks to the fact that they can supervise their production buildings. So one thing that you have to respect here for VortiX is that despite the fact that his opponent is currently making no army, there is always a chance for DeMusliM to show up with like 15 archers or so in just a matter of seconds. So that's something that you will have to be considerate of if you are playing at the HRE here. Looks like DeMusliM was quite successful collecting sheep. You could see for a brief moment that underneath that mill he had like 10 or so sheep. And that's obviously going to help his food eco in the long run. Whereas on the other side you see that the VortiX has a limited amount of sheep to work with. Could be part of the reason why he's motivated to go for the professional scouts approach here. Now, I didn't see a stable from him just yet, but if he wants to go for pro scouts, he's gonna have to add 1 or 2 more scouts. His first patch of hunt is not far away, so you can just ferry that in fast, but after that he's gonna have to venture out a lot further. His second hunt is at the southern part of the map over here in this crossing. For now, DeMusliM is just looking over the opponent's base, seeing what he's up to, and is there a stable being built? It could be a stable being built for VortiX, and here come this horseman. Here come the horsemen. I think that's going to be a forward Barbican of the Sun. It's possible that we're going to see that being dropped right next to a relic. DeMusliM doesn't have the food for it just yet, but I'm suspecting that with that gold bank, he's thinking about it. And this is a clever idea. He's realizing that VortiX isn't contesting map control, so one thing that he can do is send forward villagers, drop the Barbican of the Sun. This is going to protect the sacred side. This is going to protect the relic right next to it. And as I said, being able to supervise the stable to get the horsemen out fast is going to help a lot for DeMusliM to establish map presence. And VortiX is just now building his first stable. He did not expect the horsemen to arrive, and with that, he's getting pushed away from the gold mine. The disaster here for him is that he doesn't have the gold to go up to Castle Age yet. If you look at VortiX, he's trying to force drop off his gold. He's at 543, and he's got the food for Castle Age. He wanted to go straight into Castle, and DeMusliM's timing here was perfect. He's cutting off his opponent from gold, and VortiX could be going up to Castle Age already if those horsemen arrive just 5 seconds later, really. Now VortiX is in trouble because, as we discussed, he's got no backup gold mines to go to, and suddenly DeMusliM is in a great position simply because his opponent isn't able to get to Castle Age that easily. He's getting a market up as we speak, going for the emergency repairs on the mining camp, so that's going to keep the mining camp alive, and now he's selling some resources to go up. So on the way to Castle Age he is now, but obviously this was about a minute worth of delay, and of course DeMusliM is using that window to get himself closer and closer to Castle Age. And of course, now with the walls coming up on the right side, this relic is going to be inaccessible, and VortiX will still need to add some army to try and contest this one and this one. It's all about that delay game for DeMusliM, and I feel like if he can delay his opponent for like 1 or 2 more minutes when it comes to picking up relics, he's going to be in a great position to just potentially secure all 5 for himself. He has managed to cut off his opponent from 2, and look at those walls coming in here for DeMusliM. He isn't messing around. He wants to make sure that no prelate sneaks past. Just 2 scouts on the battlefield for VortiX. He did ferry in his own patch of huntables, but that was it. So you gotta wonder if that was actually worth it for him. Of course, it will mean that he doesn't have to go to the berries, which you have one for him at the back of his base, and you have one at the front. But of course, by ferrying in there, he's going to sort of delay his transition to farms. But of course, because of that, he invested a ton of resources, including a ton of gold, into that, as a prelate apparently sneaks past. That's going to be a second prelate sneaking past as well. But by the time they get back, the walls will be complete, so they will just run into the Barbican of the Sun anyways. Looks like the horsemen are being dispatched over here by VortiX. This could be big, because intercepting that villager would mean that the walls will be incomplete. Here come the horsemen, however, from DeMusliM. He's going to take this fight. Now the villager will be picked off by DeMusliM. He's realizing that his opponent was also trying to sneak up with a will, and the horseman numbers are increasing much more rapidly from DeMusliM. Looks like VortiX is able to yoink 1 relic here. I think DeMusliM is seeing that. He's aware of that relic, and indeed, here he goes. Pololo being popped preemptively by the prelate, but it's a low HP prelate, only 1 or 2 pokes needed, and indeed it goes down. Barbican of the Sun helped a lot here because it damaged the prelate so much that the scout and the horseman could finish it off easily. DeMusliM yet to go up to Castle Age. He has the resources to do that, and it looks like so far, VortiX wasn't able to secure a single relic for himself. Here comes the prelate once again to pick up the relic. This will be contested by DeMusliM, but the prelate should be able to pick it up. That's going to be relic number 1, however, only in the hands of VortiX. Obviously, for DeMusliM, he might not be able to deny all 5 relics. In fact, we know that he won't deny all 5 relics. But even denying 4 would be a quite significant accomplishment versus the HRE. There might be a window for VortiX to still pick up the relic on the left side, and this is what he has to gamble for. He needs to find a way to pick that up, because otherwise, his opponent is going to have the relic gold advantage, which would be quite a disaster when you're playing HRE against the Chinese. Wolf is going to start attacking the Prelate, which is quite important over here, to be honest, because having a damaged Prelate means it's much easier to kill by the Horseman. Speaking of which, here comes the Muslim, swoops in, kills the Prelate, and with that, once again, VortiX has delayed towards those relics even further. And I think we're seeing some mass spearmen, veteran spearmen, likely being added here by the Muslim, because he's seeing that his opponent is playing full cavalry. He could, in theory, go for the Palace Guard, which is a powerful unit for the Chinese, of course. But given the fact that his opponent is playing almost exclusively cavalry, it makes a lot of sense to just go spears. Looks like one knight was sent in to counterattack. Villagers will jump into the village, and with that, the knight isn't able to do much, and the spearman should be able to clean it up. You still need to kill that knight though, and it's still alive. This could be a nice window for VortiX to get 1 or 2 villager kills, and might even be able to yoink that Imperial Officer, but it looks like the Town Center finishes off the knight before it can do that. This distraction by VortiX was used, however, to pick up the relics, so he's now at 2 relics. I guess he got the most out of the situation, and now he's back on track pretty much, because 2 relics for the HRE, that looks pretty decent. You could still have 3 for the Muslim, as now VortiX is launching counterattack here. He's got quite a lot of knights, and we talked about that gold mine being heavily exposed. That could be a source of concern for the Muslim. He's bracing with the spears right now. Those do not have the veteran upgrade just yet. They will take the fight, however, and this is not a fight that VortiX wants to take. Quite a lot of spears, town center fire, horsemen are being evaporated, and the spearmen are standing strong. New spearmen coming out from the barracks. Looks like we have 1 villager taken down by the cavalry, but now the knights are repelled quite swiftly by the spears. Knights turning back to take a fight here. They are realizing that they do have the numbers advantage, and if they can press onto this position, the gold access to the Muslim could be cut off. Veteran Spearman upgrade almost in for the Muslim. He's not supervising his own barracks, by the way, which means that he's taking much more time to build up his Spearman numbers than he could. First Nest of Beasts coming out, though, and the Spearman numbers are steadily increasing. This is where sense of urgency has to kick in for VortiX, and he has to start thinking about Springolds, and potentially some archers as well. Because the thing is that he's going to encounter a lot of spears and Nest of Bees, and he needs to find a way to deal with them. Prelate in the middle was picked off by the Barbican of the Sun. That defensive emplacement is so well positioned for the Muslim. And with those walls helping out, it's helping the Muslim a lot when it comes to controlling the map. It looks like the knights are swooping in. There's a chance to jump in still through those walls. Walls were just a little too late for that villager for the Muslim. And once again, 3 knights are inside the economy of the Muslim here. And look at that, 2-pronged attack coming in. Knights from the left as well, killing all the gold miners. And suddenly, the lack of mobility is haunting the Muslim here because he's losing villagers on his gold mine. He's losing villagers on the berries. And suddenly, if you look at the villager count, the Muslim's villager lead is pretty much gone. All that Song Dynasty advantage disappearing. And now the Nest of Bees also potentially disappearing. Or is it? There is the villagers being pulled. And with the repair coming in from them, the Nest of Bees should be able to survive. Here comes the Spearman to try and push the knights away. Of course, this is a massive amount of distraction for the Muslim to deal with, and this is something that's giving a larger and larger window for VortiX. Looks like the VortiX is not planning to go up to Imperial just yet, but he's banking up a ton of gold, something that he could utilize to balance his eco and potentially field some more knights. Complete switch to what will be men-at-arms coming in here from VortiX. That's going to be a great response to the Spearman. And to a certain extent, it will work decently against the Nest of Bees as well, because they do have the larger movement speed thanks to being HRE. Looks like this knight is going to be trapped in here. Look at that poor knight being chased by spears, being chased by like 5 wolves out there. That is a dead knight. But of course, at this point, VortiX is giving up on that. New knight coming in from the north, as you could see for a brief moment that the Muslim is now out of food. He's gonna have to adjust his villagers to the berries on the north, but both players are getting ready to transition to a farming eco, given the fact that they're running out of hunt and they're running out of berries. VortiX is only using 2 scouts to ferry in deer, so it's not going to be a ton of food being brought in, but it's enough to keep his food eco running for some more time, and he has no desire to go up to Imperial Age. He wants to go full Castle Age pressure. You see, he's getting the men-at-arms out with the maces. He hasn't gotten the 2-handed weapons upgrade just yet, which is a little surprising. Okay, he's grabbing it right now. Against the light infantry, the 2-handed weapons upgrade makes more sense, but the maces upgrade is going to be a very nice preemptive measure against future possible palace guards coming from the Chinese player. Walls are once again incomplete, and this is haunting DeMusliM a lot. Here comes a knight, and this could have been so easily avoidable. Now 20 villagers running back to the town center because the walls were not finished, and suddenly this knight is going to get a lot of value for himself, even if he fails to kill a single villager. He's going to take down 1 or 2 villas no matter what. He might get the officer, and that could be big. And it looks like we're going to see palace guards being added by DeMusliM now. The Imperial officer was taken down, and it looks like in the middle, we'll have some knights intercepted. That was a little sloppy from VortiX over there. He did not expect the spears to be hiding in that stealth forest. Looking at his army numbers, he's sitting at 12 men-at-arms. That should be enough to deal with all these spearmen, however, and this is not a fight. This is definitely not a fight that DeMusliM wants to take. Knight finally gets taken down over here, but the big battle is coming in the middle. The wild card is going to be the Nest of Bees, because that's the extra firepower that DeMusliM has over VortiX, and that's something that VortiX will have to deal with. He's got some mobility with his knights, so he's going to try to burn that down before engaging with the men-at-arms. Alternatively, Spring Oats could work, but I don't think that he has a siege workshop just yet. Both sides investing most of their resources into army. As you see, it's now +6 on the heavy for the men-at-arms of VortiX, but one thing that's not visible with the extra, or with the overlay simply, is the extra damage that they get for their base attack. So they also have +2 base attack now. That's something that makes them better against light units like Spearmen, and that seems to be a castle drop. This could be DeMusliM using that window perfectly. Chinese villagers build very fast, so it's very difficult to deny them from making a castle, and you just need a small window to do this. Here come the men-at-arms, staggered formation being used to make sure that they minimize the damage output of that Nest of Bees, but the Nest of Bees is being completely untouched, men-at-arms making their way through. As the battle is unfolding, the knights are launching a counterattack into the base of DeMusliM, making sure that he's going to be distracted, villagers being pulled to repair the Nest of Bees, and with the Barbican of the Sun, the Nest of Bees fire, it looks like the Nest of Bees will survive. Nest of Bees still working away against those men-at-arms, but slowly but surely the spearmen are getting eaten up by the blue infantry. Nest of Bees still standing strong. DeMusliM losing a lot of eco behind this one. Looks like the villagers were pulled away, and with that, the siege weapon for DeMusliM going down as well. Looks like the men-at-arms had enough beef over here to take this fight. They do perform really well against both the palace guards and the spearmen of the opponent. And while DeMusliM had the numbers advantage, his army was just not suitable for dealing with men-at-arms. Now he's getting a new Palace Guard and Nest of Bees combination out here. We have a big battle unfolding in the middle, but the man-at-arms will take down the Nest of Bees in just a split second. Castle attempted here regardless of that. DeMusliM tried to get that castle up, but that's gonna be a failed effort. It really seemed like he was just hoping that he distracted his opponent enough to try and get that castle up. He's going to cancel it, and he's gonna have to fall back a tiny bit. Given the fact that he's got so much stone, you could justify just trying to build that castle right next to the Barbican of the Sun, and then use that as a staging ground, because once you get a castle up over here, that's going to be difficult to deal with VortiX. DeMusliM, as we discussed, he lost a lot of villagers back at home, so he's now down to 43 villagers as opposed to 50 of the opponent. And of course, VortiX also has free relics, and DeMusliM taps out. DeMusliM taps out. He knows really well that it's going to be difficult. It's going to be really difficult to just try to get that castle up there. He's realizing that he doesn't have the resources or the eco to be able to match the numbers of the opponent, and the HRE men-at-arms stand strong. VortiX takes game number 1. Part of this, of course, was the fact that DeMusliM lost so much eco behind this one. If he had all the villagers working behind this, I think he still would have had a reasonable chance, but losing so much eco, HRE player getting 2 relics, which is still steady 600 gold per minute for them, using the Regnitz Cathedral, and having no answer to those men-at-arms is a combination of things that DeMusliM isn't able to address, and VortiX takes game number 1 here with the HRE, and we're going to play the first home map of DeMusliM in game number 2. Welcome back to VortiX versus DeMusliM. Here we go, game number 2, and we're going into Hill and Dale, which is going to be the first home map of DeMusliM. The civilization matchup is the same as we had in game number 1, Chinese versus Holy Roman Empire, but this time around we'll have VortiX playing as the Chinese in blue and north, and down south we will have the Holy Roman Empire for DeMusliM. Interesting combination of civilizations here, because this is one of the more old school matchups that we see on Hill and Dale. Back in the days, people tried to experiment a lot with Chinese on this map. People tried to experiment a lot with the HRE, so we saw players using both. But over time, the HRE and, of course, the newly buffed Delhi emerged on top, and Chinese sort of lost ground to these civilizations on this map. Now, given the fact that, of course, VortiX no longer has Holy Roman Empire available because he used it in the previous game, it is completely understandable that he's going for the Chinese over here, and he's going to be rather successful when it comes to collecting sheep. He's operating with 2 scouts. Looking at the bases, once we have the entire map under our vision, we'll take a look at how the resources are distributed, but one of the first things that I'm noticing here is that I'm not seeing any hunt here for VortiX. He's operating with 2 scouts as well. On the left side, this scout isn't really successful gathering sheep, and here we go. Where is the second hunt at? Hang on, is this a bugged map? Oh, no, never mind. There's a hunt over here that's really difficult to see. For a brief moment, I was scared that the map was bugged because there is one hunt on the left side that VortiX can take, but the other one is very difficult to notice. Now, he's playing Chinese, so he already started dropping the mill over there and supervising it, so I'm suspecting that the reason why those blue dots are just sort of overshadowing the deer icon is because you already have the mill nearby. On the other side, you do have the hunts, rather unfavorable, to be honest, for DeMusliM. He's got one at the back, which is fine, but the other hunt is very much on the Dale area, and the bigger problem is that it's very far away from any kind of exit from that hill. Speaking of the exits, on this map you always spawn with 3 of them. Even distribution for both players, 1 in the middle, and then you have 1 on each side. One thing I would like to highlight though is that the big gold mine is much safer here for DeMusliM as compared to his opponent. You are not necessarily guaranteed a big gold mine on your hill, but in most cases, or at least in very significant amount of cases, you get a big gold mine on your hill. This is not going to be the case for VortiX, and that's a lot of villagers being pulled here. He isn't massing around, that's like 10 plus. Forward Barbican of the Sun and then voling in the opponent is a strategy over here. Of course, it's all about denying the HRE from those relics, but that seems a little too excessive. We are talking about 10 plus villagers here. 2, 4, 6, 8... Yeah, it's exactly 10 villagers being pulled. For reference, that's basically the entire economy of VortiX here. And of course, one of the things that you have to take here is that if you send your entire eco to build a Barbican of the Sun, it basically means that you will have no resource gathered back at home, and that's a very aggressive Barbican. He's going to transition these into Lumberjacks, and it looks like DeMusliM has no idea. He's going to spot the Barbican as we speak, but he has no tools of stopping this. The scouts are jumping on his gold miners. DeMusliM was able to get enough gold for the Akhund Chapel, so there is no harm done over there. But he's going to lose access to one of the forests, and he's going to lose access to that gold mine. And one of the reasons why this is a pretty decent spot for VortiX to drop that Barbican at is because this way he's able to mine gold with those villagers if needed. He's able to access wood, so he's not going to have idle villagers here by any means. He's going to have those villagers working, and you gotta wonder if he's going to follow this up with a tower rush. Because if he's so heavy on wood, he's probably going to try and drop some towers. He could start mining stone back at home and just sort of suffocate his opponent, surround him with towers. The other thing that he could do is that now he's got a foothold, he could start walling in the opponent, because one of the dangers of this one is that the opponent could sneak out on the bottom, sneak out on the north, and he could access valuable resources, talk about gold mines, talk about extra hunts, or even sneak out with the prelates, if it's a possibility. Here comes a rolling attempt from DeMusliM this time around. He wants to make sure that the opponent does not sneak past here, but there is a scout blocking the villager from building that wall foundation. You see that the villager is idle because the scout is blocking the new wall, and there is going to be a scout being pulled here, a second scout as well by DeMusliM, so he might be able to get that wall up, but of course VortiX will try to keep that open as long as possible. The wall is still open. The scouts aren't really able to block the foundations, however. Second tower coming in for VortiX, and it looks like we're going to have both scouts from VortiX escaping here. The villager was also pulled. It's going to take some damage, but ultimately it's not getting taken down. Stone is being mined by VortiX, and we are seeing some stone being mined as well by DeMusliM, so you're gonna wonder if he's gonna have preemptive towers with arrow slits on them as well. He drops the first tower right now, picks off one scout with it. The villager survived here for VortiX, however, and it looks like we're going to have arrow slits and gunpowder slits coming in for both players in a matter of seconds. First archer range being dropped right now by DeMusliM, as we do have the sneaky villager getting past that wall. The wall is still unfinished. There's a tile missing in between the wall and the forest, but that tower isn't likely to go up. More villagers are being pulled, however, and one of the scouts here for DeMusliM is rather weak, so there's a possibility of actually fighting this with more vills, and DeMusliM is doing the right thing. He's pulling his own villagers. He's realizing that it's all about the numbers game, pulls the villagers, takes this fight. hand cannon slits coming in here for our blue player VortiX, and arrow slits coming in for DeMusliM. The tower is still being built, however, and it looks like we're going to have VortiX commit against this one. He's trying to pull away the weak villagers. One thing that DeMusliM could do is trap these villagers in here, though. If he finishes the walls, he can prevent these villagers from escaping. The tower is complete, villagers jump inside, and now with the arrow fire coming in, DeMusliM is losing one villager, he could lose a second one potentially, and suddenly those towers are doing a tremendous amount of damage. Fast blacksmith coming in here for DeMusliM. This is a sign that he wants to go for the early siege engineering upgrade because he wants to take down those towers with some battering rams. That's really the only tool that he has currently against those towers. Of course, neither of the players have a great economy here because VortiX is also committing a lot of efforts into towering here, and a lot of his villagers are sort of tied down by just dropping those towers. A new tower is finished here, and one thing that you have to consider is that DeMusliM doesn't have a safe access to wood soon. His only wood line is very close to those towers now, and indeed, those towers might even be able to reach those villagers. Suddenly, DeMusliM is gonna have to leave. Now, of course, as I said, because the way to the Dale area is still open from the south, it's possible to sneak out. And that's the reason why I think it would have been quite a decent idea from VortiX to try and wall the opponent in while he was distracted with the tower rush. And you see, DeMusliM is going to drop that lumber camp on the wood line. He knows very well that this is an opportunity for him to sneak villagers out, and his opponent has no army, so it will be difficult for VortiX to find those. I love the walls up north and on the right side as well by DeMusliM. He's realizing that he might also get pushed by towers in the Dale area, so might as well try to drop some preemptive tower or preemptive walls, and this way make sure that it's going to be difficult for VortiX to push him. Now, VortiX is piling up a ton of food, but he doesn't have a lot of gold. This could still be a direction towards Song Dynasty, this could be a direction towards Castle Age even. That would be the jackpot, of course. Because if VortiX gets to Castle Age, as he loses a villager to the tower fire here, if he gets to Castle Age, he would be able to start picking up relics. Because no matter how long you delay the HRE player, as long as you are not picking up the relics yourself, you are not actually cutting them off from the relics. You're delaying the inevitable, but you need to start picking the relics up yourself at some point to capitalize on this forward. Of course, that's currently impossible for VortiX, as it looks like we're going to have the villagers sneaking past that wall once again, and the tower is being dropped. This is going to deny the berries, this is going to deny the gold mine, but I don't think that VortiX is aware of those archers, and this could be a great find for DeMusliM. He's coming in with the archers, and now VortiX will spot the archers themselves, and with that, he's going to pull off the villagers. That was risky for him. He could have lost 3 villagers there to the archers, but he's going to get away. There is a slight villager lead for VortiX right now as he finds the wood line of the opponent, and he also managed to kill a villager, some of those villagers being heavily damaged, so it's easy for that scout to pick off 1 or 2. More villagers being pulled to the right side. Now those towers have hand cannon slits, and you gotta respect that. Those do a ton of damage to vills, especially if the villagers don't have textiles, which I don't think that DeMusliM has. More villagers being pulled to the right side. Now the concern is different for DeMusliM, because he's got the food, he even has the wood, but he doesn't have a single bit of gold. So he isn't able to access gold, and that's going to mean, oh, chop through attempt. That's a nice move. That's a beautiful move from VortiX, and I don't think that DeMusliM is aware of that yet. And if that chop through attempt happens, he's gonna have a window to drop a tower on that wood line. Here comes the tower indeed. And I think that this is outside the vision of DeMusliM. Meanwhile, battering ram being built by DeMusliM, he wants to start taking down those towers. As I said, the only thing that's keeping him away from Castle Age is lack of gold. You see that he's got the food, he even has the wood, but the gold is missing. He would have the wood to build 2 or 3 stables by the time he gets to Castle Age. So it's all about that gold missing right now, but that gold is missing really badly, and there is no backup gold mines right now for him to operate with. The tower is up, walls are deleted by DeMusliM, he's sending in the first battering ram. I don't think that VortiX is going to challenge that, he's probably just going to give up on those towers. The bigger question is whether or not he's going to Castle Age, and the answer is really no. First of all, VortiX is piling up a lot of wood, he's got 600 in the bank, but from other resources, food and gold, he's still pretty low, and that's a concern for him. Because as I said, you can delay the HRE player as much as you want over here. Ultimately, it's going to come down to how many relics the HRE player is able to pick up. And the answer, if this continues, is probably going to be 2 or 3, because DeMusliM is going to have his window. Oh, a second town center coming up. This we did not see, and this is actually something that makes this build a lot more appealing for VortiX. Because, of course, while he's going to fall behind in castle age timing, he's at least going to have the villager advantage here. Now, don't get confused by the colors. I got confused for a brief moment myself because both players see themselves as blue. Looks like a scout is going to get taken down here. That is VortiX's scout. He gets away with low HP, and it's not going to be pursued by the Muslim's scout. Still, it's a little difficult to comprehend the colors because in the player POVs, as I said, both players are blue for themselves, but in the game, it's actually red for DeMusliM and blue for VortiX. I don't think there is a good way to fix this by any means. For now, VortiX is going to be able to cut off DeMusliM from the access to wood. You could see that he could finish a tower on that wood line, but there is a battering ram coming in here, and now we're back to original colors, so my mind can reset itself. Once again, red is going to be DeMusliM and blue is going to be VortiX. The tower is up on that wood line. DeMusliM piling up the gold for the feudal age, or excuse me, castle age, and with that, we could see him starting to go up to castle, getting the Ragnitz Cathedral going. Ragnitz Cathedral being built as we speak. Looking at the relic spots, he isn't going to have an easy time picking those up. There's one that's rather easy, although it's currently being overlooked by a tower. The other 4 are all across the map, and the problem for him is that they're quite far away from his base. Now, of course, his easiest way to get those is to swing out on the north. I think he started taking down the towers on the left side, so I would think that he's gonna have his window to get out on the north. Castle Age is in for DeMusliM in a matter of seconds, and it looks like we're seeing a Song Dynasty come in here for VortiX. This, of course, means that he's going to have to delay his castle age substantially here, because he's playing 2 town center Song Dynasty, but he's going to have a quite decent villager lead. The thing I don't necessarily like about this scenario is that DeMusliM doesn't have to sweat about the villager count, because he's HRE. He can get to fast Imperial, and just replenish his villager deficit with the Palace of Swabia. So I get the feel that if DeMusliM is able to secure 2 free relics over here, which he should be able to, VortiX could be in serious trouble because his villager advantage will mean basically nothing. Looks like he's calling off this assault as well. He's realizing that he's got no chance of maintaining control over the base of DeMusliM anymore. And it looks like all this tower aggression yielded basically nothing if you think about that. DeMusliM is still up to castle age. DeMusliM didn't lose a lot of villagers, or at least not more than what VortiX lost. VortiX is playing 2 town center Song Dynasty, that's true, but he's still far away from castle age. He's voting himself in right now, and while he does have a 16 villagers lead, of course, the relics will compensate for that quite easily for the HRE player. And I think the biggest problem right now for VortiX will be that by the time the 2 town center Song Dynasty play kicks in, it's going to be too late because the HRE will just get to Imperial. Sacred Site could also be captured here by DeMusliM, although his sprout is being chased by a wolf. Archers will be dispatched to deal with that, and it would be a great idea to even capture the Sacred Sites if you think about it. There's minimal effort from VortiX to contest the map control, so might as well start capping the Sacred Sites. And I'm not saying that you should start triggering the Sacred Site countdown, because I don't think that you will be able to win a Sacred Site victory here no matter what. But of course, the extra 100 gold per minute from the Sacred Sites that are completely uncontested would be a nice extra boost to your economy. First Knight is now out for DeMusliM. He's pushing back the scout of VortiX into his base. VortiX currently at 1 army, that being just 1 scout. He's not far away from Castle Age. In fact, he might already be going up. I think, the clock tower being constructed, and indeed, VortiX is up to Castle Age. So his Castle Age timing isn't going to be that terrible compared to DeMusliM, currently with 24 villagers advantage. But he's got no relics so far, and DeMusliM is already picking up relic number 2, and of course he's got no map presence. Now the question is the unit composition here for VortiX, because one thing that we shouldn't underestimate is that the Chinese have a great unit composition all across the game. For now, the Muslims' unit comp is going to be slightly better, but if this game goes very long, which is a realistic possibility to be honest, in that case the Chinese will have a quite significant advantage in unit composition. So part of the things that the Muslim will have to do is try to make sure that this game doesn't go very long, especially if the opponent doesn't have a lot of army. A fast Imperial and getting some bombard cannons out would be big for the HRA player here. DeMusliM is floating quite a lot of gold here, relic number 1, or relic number 3 actually, being picked up. It's relic number 1 from the middle of the map. It looks like we have some Lancers coming in, though, Volo attempt being popped, but that's going to be one death prelate out here. The prelate was already damaged, and the Knights could just charge in, taking it down. So for the time being, it's going to be only 2 relics for DeMusliM, but he's going to have his window to capture the third one, I'm fairly certain. First Lancer is launching counterattack, and there is technically a chance to run into the opponent's VortiX here, remember that? Because this wall is open, and if the villagers are still here on the wood line, this could give an opportunity for VortiX to raid the opponent. In the previous game, he tried something very similar. He was quite a bit behind in terms of army, and one thing that he did was just send over 1 or 2 knights, see if he can get 1 or 2 villager kills from DeMusliM, and he was quite successful doing that in that scenario. Quite a few villagers up front over here, they're going for the boar. It's a little risky, but no risk it, no biscuit for DeMusliM, especially if you consider the fact that villagers, to a certain extent, are throwaway units for the HRE. He knows very well that he's got the map control, and one thing that he gains with the boar is sustainability for his food eco. He actually failed to finish the mill there, not exactly sure what happened, but if he can maintain control over that board, that's going to give him a ton of food eco. It's going to be a lot of food to work with, which means he doesn't have to transition to farms that early. It's going to be a quite fast source of food as well, and it's going to be quite consistent, so he can supply his army with more and more food, allowing him to replenish the forces, and just maintaining that map control. Looks like rank number 3 has been picked up by him. Villagers are being pulled by VortiX to try and repair the walls. DeMusliM tries to break in now. Spearmen are joining the party. They do not have the veteran upgrade just yet, but the Lancers are coming in from behind. And as I said, there is some risk associated with taking that board because you could easily lose your villagers. Now, of course, you can rebuild your villagers at the Palace of Swabia, but you have to respect the fact that you can't just lose your entire eco before getting up to Imperial. It's 91 villagers already for VortiX, and I think that DeMusliM needs to start working towards Imperial, as the Lancers of VortiX will miss out on the villagers on the hunt. That's going to be big because, of course, those villagers, if they get intercepted, they are guaranteed to die. But as long as they are there, they provide a ton of food eco for DeMusliM, and this is something that could propel him to Imperial. Now, while the Hunters weren't found by the Lancers, the Berry villagers could be, and it looks like the Berry villagers will be ignored by the Lancers, partly because, as you see, VortiX is too busy fighting this. VortiX is looking over here, so he just right-clicked his Lancers into the opponent's base, and he wasn't even noticing the Berry vills. He's going to take the fight at the front of his base. Knights coming in from VortiX to get some raid going, and this is going to be a distraction for DeMusliM now. And because DeMusliM is distracted, he isn't able to focus on the battle in the middle. The Spearmen were very successful, taking down all the army of DeMusliM, and now the villagers in the middle were also found. Suddenly, DeMusliM finds himself in a very difficult position. His army at the front, pretty much defeated. In the middle, he's losing all the villagers on the hunt. And if you take a look at the total of villagers, 96 versus 43, massive advantage here for VortiX. Of course, as I said, Palace of Swabia could still do magic, but you get the feel that now DeMusliM is in a tough spot, simply because if you look at his overall eco, that's not amazing, and if he cannot find a way to Imperial, then he's gonna be in trouble, because though he has 3 relics in the Rangnick's Cathedral, his army is now not spectacular, especially with the Spearmen jumping on those Knights, stunning too. Their brace was very successful, and now it's a mass Spearman army from VortiX, and I did not see a single archer so far from DeMusliM. He might have 1 or 2 that can fight off those spears. He used to have a couple, but I think he lost all of them. Beautiful surround here by the Spearmen, picking off all the Knights out there. Absolutely amazing fight for VortiX, and now his army looks very healthy, 37 to 16. DeMusliM indeed is adding a couple of archers, marching drills are coming in, but there is something else that's being added, and that's Landsknechte. Ugh, I completely butchered that word at the start, but it's still in the morning. Landsknechte. That's what we are focusing on, because as you see on the right side, he's starting to add those. Now, those will be spectacular against the spears, but you have to respect the fact that they are very expensive. Most of their cost is associated with their gold cost, though, so if you have 3 relics for the Rangnick's Cathedral, you can still afford a couple of Landsknechte without any major problems. Looks like VortiX will assemble his forces at the front of the opponent's base. Imperial Age is not very far away from DeMusliM, whereas for VortiX, he seems to be going for full Castle Age pressure. And here he comes with the Lancers and the Spearmen. That's a deadly combo, though, because the Landsknechte will be terrible against those Lancers. Here comes the fight. Landsknechte will deliver quite a lot of area damage over here, but the numbers seem to be way better for VortiX. DeMusliM is on the run. It's just a full flood of spearmen and lancers, and now the eco is the target here by the blue player. Suddenly, the Muslim is forced to run back into the town center, the spearmen swarming the eco alongside the knights. Landsknecht are still being supplied to the battlefield. The Muslim is running out of gold, however. He's got some food to burn, so he can still reinforce his army for the time being. But the numbers are just looking better and better here for VortiX on the battlefield, and worse for the Muslim. And now the spearmen are finding an angle to try and jump on those knights. That's the only thing that's keeping the Muslim alive. Those few knights, and it seems like the spearmen will get a beautiful surround. And with that, all the eco now is idle. Looks like we'll have an attempt from those knights to launch a counterattack here. And I did see a battering ram, I do believe, that might have been coming from VortiX. He's now forcing all the villagers from the wood line back to the town center. The Muslim is on a full retreat. He's down to 50 population as opposed to 152. And I feel like we're seeing VortiX securing game number 2 victory as well for himself, because his opponent's economy is now non-existent, and he's still trickling in the spears, still trickling in the lancers. The villagers on the left side for the Muslim are idle. He basically has no eco working for him. Farmers gone, lumberjacks gone, berry villagers on the left side gone. Every villager is idle right now in the economy of the Muslim. His resource income is plummeting, and of course his opponent is not letting his fleet off the gas here. Still more reinforcements trickling in. I am fairly certain that multiple supervisors are utilized to make sure that the production is as fast as possible for VortiX. He's even floating a ton of resources. So, despite the fact that he's already overrunning his opponent with substantially higher numbers, he's also floating a ton of resources. He's trying to burn down the battering ram, and I think he's now going for a cathedral. He knows fully well that the cathedral is basically the lifeline of the Muslim right now. The cathedral goes down, the relics get ejected, he's gonna have basically no gold income. Now that's a lot of Landsknecht, and that's something that you have to respect here, and you really don't want to take a fight with your spearmen against them, and even not with the knights. You see, those guys are very fragile, but they do a ton of damage, especially on clustered up units, so you really want to spread out your army. I'm not sure how sustainable this is for the Muslims still, but I feel like if VortiX mixes in something, just a couple of archers against the Landsknecht, that could work. Landsknecht now pushing back all the spearmen. The lancers are still working away against the knights of the Muslim though, and those lancers will just keep rampaging the eco of the red player, forcing him to stay within the town center. And you see now the lack of food is a problem. Landsknecht is still operating very effectively against those spears, and it looks like for now VortiX will retreat. His knights are still in the base of the opponent. Eventually he's going to lose them, but he's going to do a ton of damage at the Muslim. And last time I checked, 24 villagers is not what you want to have at minute 24 for the Muslim. He has lost basically all his eco, and even with 3 relics in the cathedral, it's going to be very difficult to get these back. He's not gonna get to Imperial, and without that, he's not gonna get the Pass of Shrub. And Nest of Bees now lining up here for VortiX. He's setting a trap over here, and with that, now the Landsknecht are being forced back. Just a single volley from that Nest of Bees is able to push back those light infantry units so easily. And once the Nest of Bees are hitting the battlefield, it's going to be next to impossible for the Muslim to fight this one. 155 population against only 45. The eco of VortiX is looking like a juggernaut. He's adding archer ranges, and it looks like he's also assembling some spears back at home. His farming eco is going to be an absolute thing of beauty. You had like at least 50 farms being built on that hilltop, and lancers constantly are being trickled into the eco of the Muslim. He isn't able to catch a breath. It's wave after wave after wave of blue units getting into his base, and it's just grinding down his eco. He keeps losing villagers with every wave that comes in, and it's getting more and more difficult for him to replenish his army. He's got some more Landsknecht, and he's trying to cut off the escape path of those lancers. He might be able to actually. The lancers swing their swords, and with that some of the knights take some damage, but ultimately not a single unit is taken down from VortiX. Ragnit's Cathedral is still standing strong. That's really the only thing that's keeping the Muslim alive at this point, and he knows that. Now, he also needs to know that the only way that he's surviving this is if he somehow gets to Imperial. He's eligible to build stone walls now that we are in Imperial, or we are in Castle Age, because the players are not allowed to build stone walls in Feudal, only Castle Age and beyond. Knights once again coming in here. They are not even caring about the villager at this point that's building the walls. 2 knights were detached to try and fight the Landsknecht, while the rest of them will just charge into the food eco. And once again, the Muslim is going to have to address this issue. So the only chance for the Muslim here is to somehow wall himself up, potentially with stone walls, stop the raids inside his eco, and commit all his resources to Imperial Age. If he gets to Imperial, he's going to have a chance to recuperate those villager losses, but that's his only shot here. He can't really afford to keep making army here because his eco though having 3 relics in the Ragnis Cathedral is still just a very underwhelming piece of economy right now. On the other side, the VortiX is piling up a ton of resources. It could be Imperial Age, it could technically be UN Dynasty as well, but Imperial Age seems to be more likely. He's got 200 population, and as long as those walls are open, he's going to have a window to just keep pushing the base of DeMusliM. 69 army right now for VortiX, only 22 for DeMusliM. Of course, DeMusliM is not giving up on this one because he's hoping that he can somehow get to Imperial, work with the Palace of Swabia. With any other civilization, he probably would have given up on this already, knowing that he has no chance to get those villager numbers back on track. Look at that stream of blue units coming through the map. That is going to be the next wave that DeMusliM has to deal with. And it's just one flood of units in the middle area. One thing that could be done, of course, by our blue player VortiX is capture sacred sites to force his opponent out of his base. But he doesn't really want to bother with that, simply because his army is just so much better. And that is an Imperial Age. I think that's going to be the Great Wall Gatehouse. There comes the monk, so he's actually going for the sacred sites. Nest of Bees will start opening up against the farms. They could start taking on the farms quite rapidly, and here comes the volley. That volley is going to annihilate all the Landsknechte. That's exactly why the Landsknechte are a so weird and so much wildcard style unit. One volley, and you lose your entire army. But one thing is sure, if you can get close and you can get the damage output from those, they will destroy everything that's in their way. It's the ultimate damage versus HP trade-off that you're having over here. Ton of damage output, very low HP. And when you have the Nest of Beasts firing a volley into them like that, that's going to wipe out most of those forces. And indeed, the moment those Landsknechte were down, the Muslims said, okay, it's over. And VortiX moves into a swift 2-0 lead here, suddenly looking very healthy. Based on the results in the Swiss stage, though, as I said, we have to consider that the difference between the two players when it comes to results wasn't huge, and also that VortiX played his last round with a slightly less importance than the previous sets. We do have to note that right now, VortiX is feeling a lot more confident. It's a best of 7, so there is still a lot of wiggle room for DeMusliM. He, by any means, has the chance to come back into this one, but of course, 2-0 lead for VortiX is definitely a great start for him, and this is now a must-win in game number 3 for DeMusliM because he doesn't want to fall down 3-0. Getting VortiX to a 3-0 match point here would be a very difficult position for DeMusliM to be in, so we'll have to see what home map he chooses for game number 3, but it's almost a must-win scenario for him in game number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to game number 3 in between VortiX and DeMusliM. VortiX looking like he's in a great shape. He's going to be picking the Abbasid dynasty here in blue, and DeMusliM is going to have the Mongols being picked in red. He's on the right side of the map, whereas on the left side, we'll have VortiX spawning in. The map seems to be open map, and it looks like it's just standard Arabia. We don't have a lot of stealth forests, and indeed, it is standard Arabia that we're playing. On the left is VortiX in blue, and on the right side is going to be DeMusliM in red. DeMusliM opening up with an Ovo straight away. But the first thing I'm noticing is that his gold mines are absolutely horrendous. Obviously, with the Mongols, there's nothing to complain about if you think about it, because you choose your town center spot. But these gold mines are really far away from wood lines. The berries are also not great, although that's not a secondary, or not, that's not a priority, to be honest. It's more like a secondary consideration. For now, it looks like we're switching to the POV of a VortiX over here. Once again, don't get confused by the colors. It could be a little deceiving because each player sees himself as the blue color. Speaking of the gold mine of VortiX, that's quite exposed as well on the front, but the Abbasids don't need a ton of gold to work with, so it's not going to be a big disaster for him. The bigger question is the stone mine, because of course, that's the thing that you have to start thinking about here. You could see for a brief moment that he went with the mill at the beginning, which means that he's either delaying his House of Wisdom, or he's going to have to take straggler trees, because he already consumed all his wood. This is the first thing that you have to consider for...
What happens there?
Yeah, this is what I wanted to show. They just switched to the player cams for a brief moment. So this is what you have to consider here for the Abbasid player. If you go for the mining camp on the gold, the mill, the house, and the House of Wisdom, you are going to have no wood to work with. So you're going to have to drop a lumber camp after chopping straggler trees. I'm not sure if we actually have sound to the clean feed right now. When we started, we definitely had sound, but there might be a production issue because we don't have any sound to the clean feed. It might just be the player POVs, but I'm sort of monitoring the situation, and it looks like we're seeing spears coming in here. Good old-fashioned Mongols tower rush. Here we go. Okay, looks like on the cost screen we do have sound, so at least that's alright. And it looks like VortiX is gonna get pushed back into his town center. Now VortiX, I assume, is going up to Feudal Age, he's at 82 gold, but at Stink Stand he might be cut off from gold and he might not be able to afford fresh foodstuffs. And you see he's sending out some more villagers to grab the gold he needs, because he knows fully well that getting to Feudal Age is one thing. If you can't get the fresh foodstuffs upgrade, that's a disaster. I think he might have just enough. Nope. 117. That's a terrible scenario for VortiX to be in. He's going to send out some kamikaze miners, you see, but that's going to be very difficult because even with just 2 spearmen nearby, it's going to be difficult to get 8 gold for yourself. He should be able to get away with this one, but gold mining is not a fast process. So you see, I think he has gotten just enough. Oh, the math. He did the math on it and he's going to have just enough gold, but obviously it's not a great start for him. And the bigger concern is that he's not going to have access to mine stone. The stone is just south of this gold mine, and he's nowhere close to mining that. Dropping the tower is going to be DeMusliM on the north, and you get the feel that VortiX is struggling mightily here with his survival, to be honest. Feudal Age is just now in for him, so he's going to try and drop an archer range, but he doesn't even have a lumber camp. Now, normally what happens when you do this build order with the early berries for the Abbasids is that you take straggler trees first, and then you drop a lumber camp. But because of this pressure coming in from DeMusliM, I assume that VortiX wasn't really able to focus on that. He had to send out villagers to mine the gold for fresh foodstuffs, and now he doesn't have a lumber camp. This is a disaster because while he's able to drop an archer range, as you see, he's running out of straggler trees, and he's going to be forced to chop those trees without a lumber camp being close by. He's gonna be able to recover, I would say, but in many ways, of course, with the Mongols, you're not trying to kill a lot of villagers in Dark Age. You know fully well that at high level, it's going to be next to impossible to kill villagers, as I'm saying that there is a villager going down here underneath that mill. That's something that VortiX didn't notice. And he also loses the scout. Complete collapse for VortiX here in game number 3 so far, because everything is going against him. He did lose a villager, did lose the con, or the scout, excuse me, and now he's dropping an archer range, getting the first couple of archers out. But as I said, for the Mongols, it's not about killing the entire enemy in Dark Age. It's about doing enough damage so that you're playing from an advantageous position, and that's exactly what we're seeing over here for DeMusliM. He's going up to the Feudal Age, and as you see, because of all this pressure in the face of VortiX, even if he wanted to, he couldn't contest these otherwise quite exposed gold mines of the opponent. So at this point, it's possible DeMusliM could even get away with a fast castle, which is something that you commonly see from the Mongols if they go for Dark Age aggression. Or it's also possible we're going to see the pressure amped up here by DeMusliM and just see double archers coming in trying to push those wood lines. Because if you look at the wood spots for our blue player, this is the only legitimate wood line that they can access. The rest of them are far more exposed and they're all on the same side. So as long as you do have that tower in between those two wood lines, you can see that for a brief moment, that's going to deny access to all wood. Looks like VortiX is mining stone for a second TC, but that could be horribly late. If you think about it, if DeMusliM just goes straight to Castle Age, he's gonna have Lancers out by the time you drop your second town center. Now the question is if he's going to do that. So far, there seems to be some food supply issues here for DeMusliM because he's very low on sheep. Looks like he's going to kill that. Oh, nope. He pulls away the villagers. He almost killed that sheep very far from the TC. He has just now dropped 2 pastures, and those are affected by the Ovus, so he's going to be fine for the time being. But DeMusliM is definitely being slowed down by the fact that his food eco wasn't spectacular. Archer is now opening up against the Khan here. Khan popped the speed arrow, so the spearmen will try to jump on the archers. Nice micro by VortiX over here. You gotta wonder if this was an overextension here by DeMusliM. He could have kept those spears inside the tower, and if he does that, he would have had a good chance of just potentially repelling ram pushes. Because keep in mind that VortiX could drop a ram anytime, given the fact that he's opposites, and there's only one tower that's not being garrisoned by anyone. So it really wouldn't take a lot of effort from VortiX to take it down. The only reason why he's not going for a battering ram right now is because he's not immediately being threatened by that tower, and he wants to drop that second town center, which he will do in just a matter of seconds. Second scout being lost here for VortiX. Once again, big disaster striking here. I think he didn't scout the base of the opponent so far, so he was looking for his opponent, but he just accidentally ran into the town center fire because he didn't know where the town center was. That's one of the dangers when you're fighting against Mongols. You never know where the opponent's town center is at, so if you're not paying attention, you can very easily lose your scout, and that's exactly what happened out there. For now, DeMusliM is harassing that stone mine. I think he's aware that his opponent is done mining stone though. Of course, the reason why he's amping up the pressure on that stone mine is because he wants to make sure that in the case of VortiX not having enough stone, he's delaying that as much as possible. And it looks like we're not going to see a fast castle straight away from DeMusliM. He's adding some horsemen. He's grabbing the horseman feudal age upgrade for him. I would think that he would just add 2 horsemen to control the movement of those archers and make sure his own gold mine isn't going to get pushed, because he's banking up quite a lot of resources, so I'm suspecting that eventually he's getting to castle age here, probably just adding 2 horsemen for defense, although he's adding more. It's gotta be way more than just 2 horsemen. And it's not going to delay his castle age substantially, so he might even see some veteran horseman upgrades coming in early, and sort of mixing in some lancers. The Khan gets picked off. That was a little sloppy over there from DeMusliM. I think he didn't know about that town center spot, and now he's paying the price. That's a nice town center for VortiX. He's just now starting to build up the villager lead though, and that's going to take some time until it kicks in. Looks like you're going to have the Mongols jumping on those archers. Many of them were damaged before by the Khan, so it's going to be a rather easy fight for those horsemen, despite the fact that they begin the fight being just Dark Age horsemen, so they had lower ranged armor. It looks like we're going to have most of the archers being cleaned up, and now DeMusliM is looking towards castle age. I think he even canceled the extra horsemen that he planned to add. He just added those to make sure that the archers can't do a lot of damage, and now he's just going to be focusing on full castle age here. This is a matchup that we have seen before. In fact, we have seen this matchup very commonly on open maps like Arabia, and one of the problems that the Mongols face in many cases is that they go for the men-at-arms when they get to castle age, but by the time they arrive to the enemy base with those men-at-arms, the opponent gets the crossbows out. So for that reason, I think it would be wise from DeMusliM, as his villagers are being harassed and even picked off by that one horseman. That was a big move. Horseman still poking away. I think DeMusliM should be able to fight back here, honestly. He's got enough villagers to fight it. Although he can just pop out 2 more horsemen and fight this one as well. So the thing is that by the time you arrive to the opponent's base with men-at-arms, the opponent should have crossbows. Now, if DeMusliM starts adding some knights as well, that could change things up, as it looks like VortiX is now thinking about a lot more feudal age pressure than what you commonly see from Abbasid players. Horsemen and archers taking a fight in the middle. Horseman numbers steadily growing here for VortiX, but this is something that actually helps DeMusliM a lot. First of all, he's focusing down the archers. Spearman now joins the battle, and with that, the horsemen, they are not being looked at right now by DeMusliM, will take a lot of damage. Suddenly, horsemen from VortiX come in and they start to harass the gold mine, and that's the jackpot that you can hit with the Abbasids here, or any civilization against the Mongols. They are trying to beat you to castle age. Because it doesn't matter that DeMusliM is in castle if he cannot make gold units. He wants to make men-at-arms, he wants to make lancers. Both of those cost gold, especially the lancers do. But the men-at-arms, they do have a tiny bit of gold cost as well. The big thing, however, is if you can cut off the Mongol player from the gold the moment he reaches castle age, he's not going to be able to utilize his step redoubt immediately, and he's not going to be able to capitalize on technology advantage that he has. And that's the big thing here for VortiX. If he can keep up the pressure on this gold mine, he can delay the opponent's push quite a bit, and you see that's exactly what he's doing. And the reason why those 2 archers are so impactful on the battlefield right now is because they can pick off the spearmen. DeMusliM is apparently adding men-at-arms, but those won't fare that well against the horsemen. The horsemen will at least have a decent fight against them. Double men-at-arms coming out here for DeMusliM. One thing that he also doesn't have is a ton of stone. He spent a lot of stone making horsemen, so he doesn't have a ton of stone to do double man-at-arms training with. Here come the man-at-arms. This is a fight that apparently VortiX does not want to take. He's falling back now. He's now turning around, taking this fight. The Khan is going to be quite helpful as hell over here. Horsemen slowly going down from the Muslim. Men-at-arms are standing strong, but as I said, they don't have a bonus damage against the Horsemen, so the Horsemen can take an at least acceptable fight against it. Still, Abbasids don't have a response to men-at-arms, only in Feudal Age. Although, as surprising as it sounds, the Abbasid Spearmen with the Phalanx upgrade work quite well because they do stack very well on top of each other. And that helps a lot when it comes to making sure that they can just maximize their damage output against the men-at-arms. Looks like the men-at-arms are now pursuing the horsemen. This is once again a nice move from VortiX to make sure that his opponent is sort of pinned inside his base. More archers, more spears coming, and Castle Age is drawing closer and closer for VortiX. If he gets there, he's going to have crossbows, and this is going to be very difficult for DeMusliM to fight. Looks like he's going to surround all those men-at-arms with the horsemen, the spearmen, and this is where those spearmen stacking on top of each other with the phalanx upgrade will be immensely helpful. They're able to hit the men-at-arms on top of each other, and that's going to help a lot, maximizing your damage output. Looks like the forces of VortiX are still being pushed back. Might have been a little too greedy of a push, but I guess he wanted to make sure that he's able to cut off the opponent from gold. He could still use the horsemen to try and raid, but now you have a defensive tower out there, men-at-arms and lancers coming in. You're going to need a lot of crossbows here for VortiX, but he's still about a minute and a half away from Castle Age, going up with the Culture Wing. VortiX halfway up, but his base is now going to be under attack by men-at-arms. He's going to have a buffer here, and this is a beautiful counterattack. He's going to hit those gold miners. DeMusliM just now noticing he's going to lose one or two villagers. This is exactly how you can sort of force DeMusliM to defend, pin him inside his base, and slow down the advance of the enemies. Looks like we have VortiX sending out the villagers for the hunt, but that's already being towered. However, now the men-at-arms arrive, and it's going to be difficult for VortiX to keep his eco alive for the 2 minutes that he still needs to wait for at least 3-4 crossbowmen to appear on the battlefield. He's about 30 seconds away from Castle Age, but he's yet to add the first crossbowman, of course, and that's going to mean that his eco right now is idle. The good news is that he's got 2 town centers and currently has a villager lead, so he can, to a certain extent, afford to lose 1 or 2 vills. He's losing berry villagers to that lancer. This is not something that he noticed because there are so many attacks going off. Losing the lumberjacks, losing the villagers on the berries, the villager advantage for VortiX is disappearing in just a matter of seconds. The most annoying thing, of course, that one knight that has been killing those berry villagers, VortiX, looks like he's tapping out. DeMusliM capitalizing on that Castle Age advantage, and he's going to push that dagger deep enough for VortiX to tap out. VortiX almost made a halt happen. I think the only major mistake here for VortiX was that he tried to fight directly against the men-at-arms. I think he felt like he's got the numbers with the archers, the spears, and the horsemen. He tried to deny that gold mine. It might have been wiser to fall back a little more with the archers and the spears, and then use the horsemen a little more actively. Instead of taking direct engagements, if he used those horsemen for raiding, it could have potentially had a larger impact on the DeMusliM, because it would have forced him to stay back with a little more forces. I don't think that the situation here for VortiX was easy, mainly because the exact same thing that the DeMusliM did is what the Mongols have to do here. Not just men-at-arms, but also lancers. Even just a couple of lancers here roaming the eco of the opponent and picking off villagers left and right is immensely helpful, making sure that it's very difficult for the Abbasid player to gather resources, and if he has no access to resources, it's going to be difficult to even add crossbowmen. VortiX, the biggest problem, however, in this game was the second town center being delayed. His start was terrible, and he was set back so much. In most cases, by the time the men-at-arms arrive to the Abbasid player base, the Abbasid player has crossbows. This wasn't the case over here, simply because VortiX was set back so much in Dark Age that everything was just delayed because of that. In we go into game number 4. Welcome to VortiX versus DeMusliM. DeMusliM winning a key victory in the previous game, and now we're looking at a Mongols versus French matchup on King of the Hill. Spawning in on the southern part of the map, it is going to be DeMusliM playing as the French, and to the north, it is going to be VortiX. as the Mongols in blue, a civilization matchup that we very commonly have seen in this tournament, and we have seen some success for the French, we have seen some success for the Mongols here, but one thing that we have to say is that while the start could be better for VortiX, he's got the Ovu right next to the town center, which is always variable. That's going to be something that helps a lot with the food eco, but I do want to highlight one very important thing, and that's going to be access to gold. So this is one of those scenarios where a French player could press on to the fact that the opponent would have a very difficult time accessing gold. Because the way that this matchup goes oftentimes is that the Mongols put up some level of early aggression, or might not even do that much, just go sit back and try to go some sort of semi-fast castle defensive strategy style approach. Because with that, they could capitalize on a castle age advantage. In Feudal Age, they don't have a great matchup against the French, although they can definitely do some damage if they really commit to it. Looks like the Khan is going to pick off one sheep from the back of the scout of DeMusliM. But the key thing that you have to press on to here with the French is that you can deny all access to gold from the Mongols, which means that you can pretty much pin them into Feudal Age. And as we discussed, in a Feudal Age war, the Mongols generally don't have a great matchup against the French. Now, they're not going to be very disappointed fighting a feudal war against the French either, because Spearman Horseman, especially for Mongols double training, is still going to be an effective unit composition against the knights and archers of the French. So, all in all, you do have a rather even matchup over here between the civilizations. This is definitely one of those matchups where it really depends on how the players will use their civilizations, and either of these civs could be victorious. Looks like DeMusliM was a little late to the party with the 2 sheep that is just now arriving. He was almost running out of sheep underneath the town center, but he's going to be all fine, and he's only operating with 1 scout as it seems. I think we had no extra scout added by VortiX, he's just operating with the Khan himself, and he himself has his gold mine very exposed. That's the level of concern that he has, and it looks like we do have a second scout for VortiX here. Once again, colors will be confusing because, well, it looks like we are going to have a lot of POVs being shown to us today, and in those POVs, the players are always blue for themselves, at least. One pasture has already been dropped by our blue, well, not really blue player. Actually, yeah, VortiX is always blue, because his grand color when it comes to the spectating scene is also blue. Oh, that's very confusing. Like, trust me, it's very, very confusing. Not exactly sure why we're looking at so many POVs, especially with that confusion with the colors. I understand that, you know, the production team wants to show the POVs of the players so that at least we see what moves they're making. Maybe we're seeing some interesting stuff, like, for example, control groups being assigned to certain units or buildings and stuff. But it's actually very confusing to look at. Mill and School of Cavalry coming in for DeMusliM, that could be professional scouts for him. Whereas, what I wanted to point out is that VortiX dropped the pasture early, which is a sign that he's not going for Dark Age aggression. If you drop a pasture early, you won't really have the resources to drop a barracks. So, indeed, he's just sitting back, going up to Feudal Age right now with the Deer Stones. And you really gotta wonder if he will just go straight to Castle. Would be a little ambitious, and he can still put up some Feudal Age pressure as well. But I wonder if he would just go very defensive straight into Castle Age. And that could work really well, especially if DeMusliM goes for professional scouts, because if he's going pro scouts, he's not going to have a ton of knights on the battlefield. He will likely have 1 or 2, just so that he can harass the opponent. But now the question becomes, did DeMusliM scout that gold mine for the opponent? We discussed that DeMusliM only played with 1 scout, so you gotta ask the question, did he scout the opponent's base? Because if he didn't, he's unaware of the fact that VortiX has quite bad gold mines. First Knight now coming out here, and you see that the Khan is sort of forcing that scout to chase him all around the map, which means that the limited amount of scouting information for DeMusliM could haunt him for some time. First Knight now coming out, VortiX, so far no army dropped. I wonder if he's going to drop a barracks right next to that Ovu. It's right next to the town center as well, so you could easily drop it. And it's going to be impossible for the opponent to prevent that barracks being dropped right next to the Ovu. That could be an option to try and deal with the knights. He's going to get a confirmation on the first knight being popped out, so he needs to get some sort of reaction going. Not a single barracks, not a single defensive tower, so you gotta wonder how exactly he's going to prevent that knight from slaughtering his gold miners. VortiX was very active with that Khan harassing the lumberjacks for a long time, and you see that he's going to keep applying pressure with it. He's definitely one of those players that loves to use the Khan as a standalone harassment style unit. Looks like we're also going to have a horseman coming in. DeMusliM is adding that because he's going to have some mobility advantage over that Khan with that. So this way, he's going to be able to push away the Khan, but that Khan is just doing so much damage, forcing the opponent to make a horseman, forcing the opponent to abandon the wood line with 1 or 2 villagers just so that he can keep those alive. Now the first knights arrive and they're finding no one on that gold mine. Barracks has been dropped by VortiX, so he's going to have a reaction to that. But it really doesn't seem like VortiX is going to commit a ton of effort into feudal age aggression. Looks like DeMusliM is not going for professional scouts, he's simply taking the berries, and it seems like he's already out of food underneath the town center, and that's a problem. He's almost depleted his berries already. He has no food under the TC. He's gonna have to go for the hunt. But with the spearmen coming forward and him not having any archers to deal with them, that could be quite exposed. And I think that Khan is just baiting that horseman into the spearmen. Or is he? The spearman could just sneak out and harass those villagers on the hunt. That could also be a great move. Knight is now turning around. Khan still trying to get away. Khan is at low HP, and the spearmen are still nowhere to be found. So there's a chance that the Khan gets yoinked. Let's see if that's going to be the thing for us. Indeed, the Khan goes down. Spearmen are slowly getting to that hunt, however, and it's all about that right now. I think VortiX just wants to get some harassment done on the hunt, wants to get some harassment done on the berries, and this is the biggest weakness right now for DeMusliM. He basically has no safe food eco. The berries are almost depleted. He's just now ferrying in the deer, so in the end, he decided to go for the professional scouts build, and that's going to secure the hunt for himself. This is something that just now got spotted by VortiX, who's working towards Castle Age here slow and steady. You see, he's banking up food and gold. His opponent has committed some resources to knights, but not a ton, so the Castle Age timing of DeMusliM isn't going to be terrible over here, unless he runs out of food. More spears are coming up. First archers hitting the battlefield right now. Those will be able to pick off those spears, and I wouldn't be surprised to see VortiX retreating. He was able to get some hits on the enemy knights, and I think he's just trying to deny the other hunt here. He's realizing that his opponent is so heavily reliant on the berries that there has to be some food-related issues here for DeMusliM, and that's something that VortiX wants to exploit. And despite the fact that he's not going to be able to deny the hunt entirely with the spears, he's going to slow down his opponent quite considerably. And this is something that's giving a window for VortiX to get to Castle. Getting to Castle would mean that he could get some Lancers going. That would definitely be the best answer here because his opponent already has a stable, his opponent has an archer range. Man-at-Arms could work quite decently, but I think that if VortiX gets to Castle Age, he should go for double Lancer production and just start raiding the opponent. He's on the way to Castle Age in a matter of seconds. DeMusliM is banking up food, but he's very low on gold right now, and that's a concern for him because even if he gets the food very soon for Castle Age, he's not gonna have the gold. Spearman still maintaining control over the middle, and you gotta wonder if VortiX will go ambitious and try to capture the sacred site early on. Spearman now jumping on those gold miners. Looks like DeMusliM was caught off guard here. He's not going to be able to pull all the villagers away. He loses one will on that gold mine. It's a very nice and easy kill here for VortiX with minimum investment. That's a very good move from him. He's still behind by 4 villagers, of course, thanks to the fact that his opponent is playing French, but that was a very nice and easy villager pick up there. Step Redapt on the way, seemed to be 8 or 9 villagers building it. Archers now increasing in numbers, crawling up towards the middle. VortiX has no response to them just yet. It looks like a Khan will be sent in once again from the left side. It's all about using that Khan as a standalone harassment unit. Fast Blacksmith for DeMusliM here, that's going to increase the melee attack of his units immediately. And as I said, he's not far away from Castle Age himself. 800 food in the bank and 300 gold, but he's obviously going to be quite a bit behind compared to VortiX regardless. VortiX now up to Castle Age. His Khan is going to be even more effective against those scouts, but it looks like DeMusliM is able to ferry in all the deer, and it seems that VortiX is not adding a ton of army. He's opening up with some knights. As we speak, that's probably double trained knights, and that's probably the best way for him to play this. His opponent invested a ton of resources into archers. Those will be completely useless against the knights, and it looks like he's also adding the veteran horseman upgrade. Is that veteran horseman or veteran spearman? The icons look very similar for the two upgrades. Veteran Spear would make a lot of sense. Veteran Horseman, not necessarily so much. Khan still being used over here. I wonder if DeMusliM is going to notice that he needs to pull the villagers. He pulls the villagers in time. Knights will be healed back up with Chivalry, but of course this Khan is just doing so much damage, and making sure that DeMusliM is staying within his base. This is giving a great window for our blue player VortiX to potentially even contest the middle. First Lancer is now coming out, and I do think that it was Veteran Spearman in the end that the blue player VortiX was and is researching. So he's going to have Knights and Spearmen. That's a deadly composition, but it depends on how many archers, how many crossbowmen the French player has, that's for sure. Spearmen now indeed achieving veterancy. The models are very similar to the standard hardened Spearmen, but the shape of the tip of the spears is what differs. So this is how you can tell that those are veterans. They do have that glaive style tip for the spear, and hence they are now veterans. Looks like we're going to have a battle unfolding here. Lancers charging in, Spearmen also coming out here. Khan popping the arrow to the battle, and it looks like now the gold miners are getting forced off. This is big. This is huge because the gold miners are now running back to the town center. Some losses will be suffered from both sides, but ultimately the big thing is that DeMusliM was forced away from this gold mine, and he didn't seem to have expected this push. Lancer numbers are increasing for VortiX, and he's going to have a window to push this one again. And if you look at that gold mine, that's dangerously exposed at this point. You're going to have the Khan once again coming in here with the Lancers. The Spearmen disappeared from the battlefield for a brief moment, and it looks like now VortiX is going to use this window to regroup. But that became very scary here for DeMusliM. In just the blink of an eye, he was raided very aggressively, and now two Knights are detached and they're swinging to the left. That will be your diversion, and then you're going to use the rest of your forces to hit the gold mine. And it looks like the diversion might work because the Knights are heading towards the left. They will encounter the two Lancers here from VortiX. I think that DeMusliM was thinking about the same thing, sending his own Knights to the base of the enemy while there is no pressure coming up. But this is risky because now there is minimal defense back at home for DeMusliM, and this is something that could be exploited by the blue player VortiX. He's hesitating, however, and this is a window for DeMusliM to potentially launch a counterattack. Lumberjacking eco here for our red player DeMusliM is absolutely terrible, and I think that VortiX has enough to hold this off back at home. Meanwhile, on the other side, DeMusliM now suffering from a lot of casualties on that woodline. Here comes the Night Charge from DeMusliM. There is enough forces here, I think, for VortiX to hold this off. He might lose one or two villagers, but DeMusliM's eco is under a lot more pressure. You see villager counts are evening out here, which is never a good sign for French, but this is a great pickup by DeMusliM. The villagers on the gold, fleeing back to the town center, being intercepted by the Knights. Spearmen were called off by VortiX to try and deal with all of those Knights, and ultimately he cleans them up. The big thing here is that I don't think that our red player, DeMusliM, is going into Castle Age. So while all of this is happening and both sides are losing villagers, the final verdict is that DeMusliM is not going into Castle Age, which means that he's still playing from a technology disadvantage position, and he's fighting against Castle Age Knights with Feudal Age Knights. Four more Knights are being sent over by DeMusliM, but here comes the Lancers, and once again VortiX is going to find angle after angle to do damage at the opponent's eco. He's slowly grinding down the economy of the opponent. He's going to dive in, pick off two villagers, disengage. He's going to intercept the Knights in the middle as well. So not a single fight is going well for DeMusliM. He's now getting ready to go up to Castle Age. Economies are still rather even, although the Mongols, of course, have the step redoubt, so that should be slightly better. And I love this move from VortiX. He isn't able to break the defense of the opponent right now. He isn't really going to be able to capitalize on the middle control, so there's no point forcing control in the middle. What's the best thing he can do? You already have a lead, make it larger. He's going to drop a second town center, and that's going to help a lot, widen that villager gap. And this is going to be something that he's going to have little investment into, because of course the second town center is expensive, but after that, it pays off quite easily. And as long as DeMusliM isn't raiding him, it's something that he's going to get away with. This is going to be spotted by DeMusliM. Now he knows that his opponent is on two town centers, but he's going to be too busy defending back at home because you got Knights from the left, Knights from the right, and DeMusliM has to stretch out his defenses. He's got a ton of archers. He seemed to have prepared for a lot of spearmen to push him, but those will be completely useless against the Lancers. And VortiX knows that. VortiX knows very well that his opponent is committing so many resources towards archers that he should just go full Lancer, and that's exactly what he's doing right now. cavalry clashing into each other on the left, but as a diversion, VortiX is going to send in some knights to the base of the enemy as well. He was throwing some torches on that town center, but now he's switching towards that gold mine. And once again, DeMusliM is on the run. He's forced back into the base with all the villagers that he has on those berries. And now his food eco is in jeopardy. He has no access to food. He still has some knights on the battlefield, but you see he's scrambling to get some more food for himself. And the Lancers will be more than happy just taking down the villagers here. You might even risk losing all your Lancers over here if you're VortiX for the sake of killing 10-15 villagers. Looks like VortiX is going to play this one much safer. He doesn't want to take any big risks over here at this point. He knows that he's ahead, so he just wants to make sure that he's not going to throw away that lead. Many of his Lancers are heavily damaged here, so there's a chance that he would lose most of them in this fight. He's going to pop the defense arrow, fighting off those Feudal Age Knights. Archers will contribute minimally to this engagement. Looks like for now VortiX will call off his forces. But of course behind this one he's building up a much better eco, and now he's stretching out the attention of DeMusliM again. He's basically pulling all the forces of DeMusliM to the left side, and then he's going to use that window to swing in from the right and hit the gold miners once again. He knows fully well that the gold mine and the berries are basically the primary targets for the raid, and I think that DeMusliM lost track of those forces, or he's intentionally heading towards the opponent's base. This is a big gamble for DeMusliM because his own eco is wide open for raiding. However, if you look at the eco of VortiX, that's also wide open for raiding. So this could be very risky for DeMusliM. He's going to lose a lot of villagers back at home. The question is, can he compensate for that by killing a lot from the opponent? Here comes the raid on the wood line of DeMusliM. He's going to have to abandon that with all the villagers he has, and he's going to tap out. He's realizing that the counterattack is going to wipe out most of his eco, and even if he kills some villagers, he will likely be unable to recuperate those losses. Quite a lot of positional warfare was seen in the previous game. You could see that VortiX was able to outmaneuver the opponent's army in many cases, and he was just able to always be the aggressor at the opponent's base. He really never was punished for that fast castle, and it was all about the fact that his aggression kept DeMusliM inside his base, so DeMusliM could never exploit the fact that VortiX had an exposed gold mine, and VortiX just got to Castle Age, and from that point on, it's technology advantage. And what's more important now for VortiX is that he won the third game that he needed to. I actually had to update the score. Third. There we go. Score should be updated now. He's going to have the win with the Mongols, and it's going to be a loss for the French of DeMusliM. And now VortiX moves on to a match point position. One more victory, and he's in the semifinals. Whereas for DeMusliM, from this point on, there is no more room for error. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to VortiX versus DeMusliM. This is game number 5 in a best of 7 between the two players in the $100,000 N4C main event quarterfinals. VortiX is at match point, and he's going to be utilizing the blue Rus versus the Abbasid dynasty of DeMusliM in red. The map that we're playing is Lipany, which is a slightly weird choice, or slightly weird place for the Rus to be chosen. Abbasid Dynasty, one of the most popular selections for Lipany, of course. It is a map with a ton of berries, so this is something that the Abbasids can capitalize on very effectively. Of course, the Delhi is in most cases banned, and because of that, you don't really see the Delhi here. Delhi would be just as powerful, if not more powerful, as the Abbasids here. Bit of a scout dancing up north, you will have a scuffle between the scouts. You see the micro between the two players, both of them swinging swords and then retreating. It's all about making sure that the Rus player is getting as low amount of bounty as humanly possible. And because it takes 2 shots to take down a deer, you always have to be the one landing the second shot, and that's exactly what DeMusliM is doing over there. Both of them are cleaning up one of their own patches of huntables, while this contested one looks like it's going to be something that DeMusliM bails out on, or is he? Looks like he's going to deny that gold as well. From VortiX here, a lot of scout dancing coming up, and VortiX is like, okay, I'm just going to kill the sheep from the back of your scout. Because, as things stand, you can't shoot the first arrow into those deer. The moment you do that, your opponent is going to yoink the deer with the second arrow. With that being said, it looks like we're at 135 bounty for the Rus player, 145 as we speak. In a 1v1 Lipany game, I would say that the target should be the 250 mark so that you get your level 2 bounty. I would be very surprised if VortiX could get to, let's say, 300, 325. 300 might be legitimate and possible. 325 feels a little ambitious, I would say. Now, one of the things to look at on Lipany is that oftentimes the map spawns in a way that you do have stealth forests in the middle, which can conceal the movement of your troops. So whenever you're playing Lipany, as compared to, let's say, Arabia, you have to be very thorough with your scouting, and you want to make sure that you have some sort of insight into that stealth forest, because otherwise you could be in for a nasty surprise. Looks like the Wolf was aggroed by VortiX here. That's going to be a nice advantage for him because, of course, he wants to grab the Wolves for himself. That's 25 gold apiece. Once again, colors will be a little deceiving because now, right now, or at least for us, VortiX is the red color, but in the casting overlay, it is blue color for him. As you see, the economy wing is coming in for DeMusliM, and on the other side, you could see the Golden Gate being dropped for a brief moment for a Rus player. I really wonder if the game plan here for VortiX with the Rus is just to go for fast castle and try to beat the Abbasid player to castle age. Because we have seen attempts at doing that with the Mongols, for example. They may or may not work, but ultimately the key thing is, can you overrun the Abbasids with some castle age units before he's able to just capitalize on that economic lead that he's building up with the second town center? Alternatively, you can think about feudal age pressure with knights using the Rus, but I would be very surprised if that was the game plan for VortiX. For now, he's staying heavy on the wood, which is a little unconventional, I would say. If you want to go for a fast castle like this, usually you prioritize food a lot more, because as you see, he's got a limited amount of food to work with. Of course, he's gonna need some wood because he potentially wants to drop a defensive tower on his wood line. Here comes professional scouts for him. And of course, with the wood, he can also use that to sell it and get the gold he needs for Castle Age. So it's not a terrible situation right now for him, but it's a little unconventional. Two scouts are now moving in. It looks like he's going to do some harassment on the stone miners. He doesn't want to completely deny this stone mine forever. He just wants to use those scouts to something until he's grabbing the professional scouts upgrade. And free scouts are no joke here. They will harass those stone miners a lot, and it will be much more difficult for the stone miners to get the stone they need for the second town center. That's what I wanted to say. Bit of a tongue twister out there. Looks like we do have a stable coming in, so after all, VortiX might do quite a lot of damage here, and in fact, he's going to be able to surround the villager out there. The lady's trying to escape, but there is no shot at that. You see, she seems to be a little hesitant on which direction to go, and that's going to be a villager kill. Very nice pickup there for VortiX, and I'm starting to wonder if he's going to just see that his opponent is so much behind in stone mine that he's going to send in a horseman. Remember that VortiX can select the stone mine and see how much stone was taken from it. So he knows very well if his opponent is close or not to dropping that second town center with the stone. And he might say, look, he's still far away from getting the stone he needs, so if I start adding horsemen here, I could potentially do a ton of damage and delay that second town center even further. Looks like we're going to see some gold miners being sent out by VortiX, so he's giving up on that fast castle plan. He's going to play feudal age over here, which is a very risky call, and I'm not necessarily a fan of that. But he might feel like there's a window for him to do damage here, and with professional scouts ferrying in all the deer, he's still going to have a good eco behind this, but he's going to put a lot more pressure on the opponent than you usually see, and it looks like he's not even opening with a horseman, he's going for a knight. Now, DeMusliM has the stone he needs for the second town center, but he hasn't gotten the wood yet, and you could already see for a brief moment that VortiX had a range up, so he's ready for the spearmen that are coming out right now from DeMusliM. And this is the other thing that you can utilize or do against the Abbasids here. If the Abbasids are playing so defensive, you can roam the map with a couple of knights, try to charge and pick up one or two villagers. This works better with the French, of course, because the French will be able to heal their knights back up, which is not an option here for the Rus. But still, knights plus archers here could work to a fairly effective level for our blue player. VortiX is trying to charge in, gets the charge, gets the hit, but this is one of the differences between the French and the Rus here. The French, after a successful charge, can kill the villager with one hit, whereas for the Rus they will need two, because the French will get a bonus damage after a successful... come on, I need to set my brain back on track, because apparently these tongue twisters are killing me today. So, takeaway point is that you do have bonus damage for a successful charge for the French, and because of that, you don't need two hits for the French with the sword to kill the villager, whereas you do need it for the Rus. You see the knight is still struggling to kill villagers. That's the first villager taken down. Second villager will be taken down as well. Both of those were damaged, and DeMusliM didn't send them back to the town center. Oftentimes when you have damaged villagers like that, you would just send them back underneath the town center to keep them as safe as possible, and that wasn't the case over there for DeMusliM, so he's going to lose 2 villagers out there. Currently, it's 24 villagers against 28, so the Rus player currently has the villager lead, but that of course will soon change, thanks to the second town center being completed for DeMusliM. For now, the Muslims' only military presence on the map is just a couple of scouts roaming the map, seeing what his opponent is up to. You could see that VortiX was trying to hide the archers in the stealth forest. He's trying to make sure that the Muslim has no idea about those archers coming in, and I'm starting to wonder if this is gonna be so heavy commitment from the Rus player to feudal age pressure that we might even see some battering rams potentially being made. There is a blacksmith coming up, and there's a barracks as well. Archers are already out on the battlefield. You do have knights on the battlefield, with a couple of spearmen and then battering rams being made. This could be threatening to the DeMusliM. Now, the DeMusliM is not super far away from Castle Age, to be honest. You might not see those resources in just yet, but he's already mining gold, and he's on the berries still. So, of course, it's not going to take forever for the DeMusliM to get to Castle Age, and that's the big problem here for VortiX. If his opponent gets to Castle Age, the Man-at-Arms should be able to beat this one back. 2 scouts get taken down over here by VortiX. That's going to be painful for the DeMusliM, because that was basically all the vision that he had in the map. Which means that now he's going to be pretty much playing blind, and that's always scary, because if your opponent has a blacksmith, if your opponent is going for feudal age pressure, you want to know if the rams are coming. You want to know when exactly he's about to push you. And with that, the knights are now swooping in, killing 1 villager, killing 2 on the gold mine. Once again, nice raid. And VortiX so far is spinning the DeMusliM inside his base. Keep in mind, this is match point, and on paper, this civilization matchup favors the Abbasids, especially on Lipony. However, VortiX knows very well that he just needs 1 more win, and if he can secure this, he's in the semifinals. Siege Engineering now coming in, and with that, the first battering ram is now being made. Food is piling up for the DeMusliM. Castle Age, however, still far away because his gold miners have been raided, and that's probably the angle of attack that VortiX has to choose. Now that I'm seeing this, all the gold mines are on the right side. There is one over here, and one over here. So if you push that angle, if you're VortiX, you can cut your opponent off from all gold, and there is going to be no way for the DeMusliM to get up to Castle Age. It looks like instead the push will be directed towards the additional town center that was added. Because it's much easier to take down the second town center, and it's also not something that the opponent can repair. So if this town center gets taken down, the damage that's done is permanent. And what you will do is that you will basically charge in with your knights under the town center, and sort of absorb the arrow fire, allowing your archers to stay alive a little longer, making sure that the villagers can't burn down the battering ram. Looks like the DeMusliM so far hasn't reacted to this one, and he seems to be a little puzzled on what to do. He's grabbing the Textiles upgrade, and he's grabbing Camel Archers. So he's patiently waiting, and I would think that he will start repairing the town center. He's waiting for Textiles, and then he will try to use some of the villagers to take down the battering ram. We should know that the villager count is pretty much even right now, so at this point, the DeMusliM wasn't really able to capitalize on that second town center, and that TC is now going down quite rapidly in HP. The larger concern right now for the DeMusliM is that he's out of wood. He's out of wood. You see, it's -1 on the overlay. That's definitely a bug, but he doesn't have more wood, which means that he needs to fight this one right now. VortiX not really focusing down the villagers, however. Town center on fire, rams being pulled back. Bit of a miss micro there by VortiX. He did not really fight the villagers. Villagers now chasing down the second battering ram. Looks like the second battering ram gets away. Archers pick off the spearmen. VortiX did not want to fight that one, and because of that, the town center stays alive for the DeMusliM. He's now in the possession of the wood he needs to repair. Town center is still being poked at by that one battering ram. VortiX, I'm not exactly sure how he wants to finish this game though, because I think this was his window to do a ton of damage. His opponent ran out of wood, so it was not possible to repair the town center any further, which means that the DeMusliM was forced to fight. Villager count still rather close. Villagers once again being pulled to take down the ram. Nice micro by the DeMusliM, jumping back into the town center. And as things stand, another range is being dropped by VortiX. So he's going to go full feudal here, that's not even a question. Camel Archers now in large numbers, and those are quite effective against the spears, but their biggest effect comes from the fact that they can debuff the enemy cavalry here. Archers now retreating here for VortiX. Numbers are looking very healthy for DeMusliM. He's coming in with mass spearmen, villagers also being pulled to take down the battering rams. The spearmen of VortiX got massacred by all those spears from the red player, DeMusliM. Archers now focusing down most of the spears, however. Not a single villager was killed, I do believe. But numbers, those are looking pretty decent for DeMusliM to hold this one. The thing, however, is that DeMusliM is now committing all his resources into this defense. Whereas for VortiX, as weird as it sounds like, he's actually closer to Castle Age than his opponent is. If you look at that resource bank, if VortiX is just going to stop producing army, he could potentially start moving towards Castle Age, and he still has a formidable army that's capable of threatening the opponent's base. New batch of berries now found by DeMusliM on the right side, and that's going to help his food eco quite a bit, but it also means that he doesn't have a ton of villagers inside his base, which will make it very difficult to pull a dozen of villagers to take down those battering rams with. Once again, VortiX is being cautious, he's poking around the enemy base. Here come the villagers, archers focusing down most of the spears here. Spearmen for DeMusliM bracing against the impact, and that's going to mean that VortiX isn't able to engage this one with the knights just yet, but the archers are taking down most of the spears. This is still a good fight here for VortiX, and now he's jumping on the villagers. He's realizing that the spearmen are gone, and this might be an overextension here from DeMusliM. He's trying to finish off the battering ram, and he does, but so many villagers could fall here. All the spearmen are down, and now the archers will start focusing down the vills, and when the dust settles, 2 battering rams were taken down, but so many villagers, so much army was also taken down from DeMusliM, and you gotta wonder if this was worth it, because rebuilding those battering rams will be much easier than rebuilding so many spearmen and rebuilding so many villagers. Behind this one, you see that the VortiX is picking up the hunt of the opponent as well. You could see for a brief moment the scout passing by over here, carrying a carcass. Nice idea here for VortiX. He wants to maximize the efficiency of that professional scouts, and so far he was successful doing that. He's ferrying in carcasses from all across the map. He's getting the second battering ram going. DeMusliM now has enough food to repair the town center for some time. He's at 52 villagers as opposed to 45, as once again we're going to have a push coming in here from VortiX, and VortiX is also sending a knight to the right side. That's something that could have been done a little earlier, but this is still a good time to do it, especially because now DeMusliM is going to be focused on this push. It's once again, divert the attention of the opponent, push at one side, and then use 1 or 2 knights to do some harassment. It looks like the knight was heading towards the gold mine or the lumberjacks, so he's not heading towards those berries, which would actually be the jackpot. Second town center, however, under attack, and it looks like DeMusliM wasn't really reacting to it. Not a single villager repairing it, and this second TC is going down without any major problems. Now VortiX also finds the hunt and the berries on the right side, and I'm wondering if DeMusliM even noticed that ram push. He was so focused on that knight, and he just didn't even care about that town center going down. I'm really wondering if he even noticed it in time. House now going down as well, and suddenly you see those battering rams knocking away at those production buildings. DeMusliM still has nothing back at home to deal with this. This is so weird. This is so weird. He doesn't really have the army numbers to fight this one anyways. It's 40 army versus 23, but there is just no resistance against all these battering rams, and at this point they can start taking on the starting town center. Knight now getting surrounded by the villager riot here, but I mean, the knight is gonna be more than happy taking this fight. You sacrifice one knight for the sake of killing 2, 3, 4 villagers. That knight will have a bad day, will be killed by the villagers. But behind this one, of course, the archers, the knights are now heading towards the gold mine, the lumberjacks of DeMusliM, and all the houses are being burnt down, which will mean that DeMusliM is now housed. 83 out of 80 is the population count, and those houses will just be a growing and growing concern at this point. DeMusliM, his tournament life on the line, but this might be a little too steep hill for him to climb. Here comes the Spearman counterattack. Camel Archer is also jumping in on this one. This is the last hurrah of DeMusliM, really. He's pulling all the villagers. He lost his second town center already. He needs to win a big fight over here, but I'm not exactly sure how he's going to do that. His numbers are just not there. The archers will focus down the villagers. One battering ram goes down, but what's the price that DeMusliM is paying for this one? So many villagers being picked off. So much idle time on his economy, and his army isn't really able to match up against the opponent's army here. The knights are still standing strong, and they will absorb a lot of arrow fire, and as you see, DeMusliM is once again getting pushed back, his tournament life on the line. One of the 2 invited players into the $100,000 N4C might fall in the quarterfinals, because there's just nowhere left to go, nothing left to do. And with that, I feel like it is just a matter of seconds until DeMusliM is going to call it. The thing is that he's obviously going to fight until the bitter end, simply because this is the last game if he doesn't. But I'm not exactly sure if he can hold out against the next wave of attacks. VortiX could also think about Castle Age now, start picking up the relics. But I think at this point, VortiX will just go full feudal. And the moment those knights will hit the villagers on the right side, that's the final nail in the coffin, because those villagers, they were able to take down one knight. They won't be able to take down 3-4 knights coming in there, especially if the archers divert their attention to that side as well. The villagers will try to make a run back home. I wonder if VortiX will try to intercept them with the archers. That would be a great move from him. Behind this one, VortiX also has to fix his food eco because he ran out of hunt, but now indeed he's cutting off the escape path of those villagers, and that villager count right now for DeMusliM is dropping really fast. There is just nowhere to go. He's not gonna be able to recover all these losses. His opponent's eco is completely untouched, and now he's down to 38 villagers. DeMusliM tried it, but I think today it was shown that VortiX was one level above him, at least in today's set, because pretty much every single game, VortiX prevailed over DeMusliM in a somewhat convincing fashion, and VortiX, one of the candidates to potentially win the tournament, then having a somewhat mixed result in the Swiss stage, now is looking really strong. And this is what I referred to when VortiX played against Viper, I believe, in the last round, that I don't think we have seen a full 100% VortiX playing over there. Now this is 100% VortiX, and boy oh boy, is he powerful. I feel like VortiX may have just played his best set so far. DeMusliM also played well, but he was outclassed today by VortiX, and at this point, the battering rams are just poking down on all of those buildings. DeMusliM is somehow trying to hang on to this one, but his chances seem to be minimal. He's trying to mass a big army, try to take a decisive fight, but it's very difficult when your houses are being constantly burnt down, and you are at 36 army as opposed to 52 of the opponent. Most of that army is horsemen, camel archers, and spears. You see, the entire base of DeMusliM is right now on fire. There is nowhere to go. He's cut off from the berries, he's cut off from the hunt, so DeMusliM has 30 food per minute, 0 gold per minute. His entire eco is pretty much lumberjacks. Whereas on the other side, of course, his opponent is trickling in more archers, more knights. And I think now VortiX is realizing that he might want to go to Castle Age because he's banking up a ton of resources. He's got a lot of wood in the bank, which he could sell with the Golden Gate if he has the tickets for it. The Rams aren't even focusing down the House of Wisdom. They're realizing that there is no point doing that, just take down the production buildings. Here comes the last hurrah of DeMusliM, trying to somehow salvage this game. But this is just a very much uphill's battle. So many archers, so many knights. It looks like he might send his army for a counterattack. That might be his only shot, really. Like, if he can somehow get a ton of damage done at VortiX's eco, that might save him somehow, but I feel like the chances of DeMusliM winning this game right now, or even just climbing back into this one, evening it out, is less than 1%. Those Rams are rampaging his eco, and you see all of those dead buildings. I think the time has come for VortiX to go for that House of Wisdom. If he takes it down, that guarantees that the opponent will not get to Castle Age anytime soon, and 4 Battering Rams takes it down quite fast. Behind this one, all the buildings have been burnt down. At some point, DeMusliM is going to have to fight this. He's up to 49 army, so his army is looking quite healthy, to be honest. But Archer's Knight, that's a deadly combination. Camels will be there to debuff the Knight, that's definitely helpful. The thing I'm concerned about here for DeMusliM, in terms of his army, is that he doesn't really have a ton of spears. So dealing with those knights will still be a quite significant difficulty. Here comes the big battle. DeMusliM is going to try and push the opponent back for once. The House of Wisdom is now being burnt down. Horsemen trying to jump on the archers. One thing that the VortiX has over here is quite a lot of archers, but those could struggle against that many horsemen. Horsemen actually getting a beautiful surround over here. Villagers are being pulled to push back the battering rams. This is as good as it gets here for DeMusliM. He's taking a good fight. Spearmen now disappearing from the battlefield, however, which allows the knights to take down all the horsemen. This was a great fight here for DeMusliM. VortiX had way too many archers on the battlefield and just way too few units to deal with those horsemen. Still, in the end, the numbers prevail, battering ram knocking on the town center, and ultimately DeMusliM is getting pushed back into his eco. I think VortiX is realizing that he might not be able to finish the game in Feudal Age, so he's just gonna go to Castle Age. You see him banking up the resources, but there is 3 more battering rams coming in. The House of Wisdom is gone, so the moment the town center gets taken down, it's immediately game over for DeMusliM. 1 battering ram was sniped by the villagers, so there is only 2 that remain, and the knight is going to find the berry wheels on the left side. So many villagers exposed over here for DeMusliM, but it's not like he has a chance. He needs to try and do something here. He cannot play safe anymore. He needs to go for the riskier cause, try to get some resources for himself outside of his base. Big clash in the middle. Once again, some horsemen join the fun, but the numbers are once again way better here for VortiX. 54 army versus 35. Villagers being pulled to take down the battering rams, spearman numbers being taken down by the archers, and once the spearmen are gone, the knights are ready to jump in. Villagers will be pulled to take down the rams, and they will be successful doing that, but of course now it comes down to army numbers. DeMusliM is losing most of his army here. The villagers are now out there exposed. Once again, targets of arrow fire. And apparently the lumberjacks will be swarmed by archers. That might be the final nail in the coffin here for DeMusliM because there is nowhere to go now. He really tried until the last minute. And with Castle Age now closing in for VortiX, you get the feel that this is going to be a zero chance game very soon for DeMusliM. He's at 66 population. His villagers on the lumber camp are getting picked apart. 33 army versus 22. DeMusliM is really fighting it out to the bitter end, simply because this is the last game of the set if he doesn't. He knows very well that this is match point for VortiX. If he taps out here, he's out of the tournament, and he will finish with a quarterfinal placement. He still would get to the top 6, which is quite a good accomplishment for him, but obviously he's trying to somehow salvage this game. At this point, it's really just a hope that your opponent makes a grave mistake and you might be able to climb back into this one. But realistically speaking, VortiX should not lose this game at all. He's up to Castle Age, and now he's going to start picking up the relics and just capitalize on the fact that his opponent is pinned inside his base. Houses still being burned down, making it very difficult for DeMusliM to fill up that population space. Farms have been added, actually, by VortiX. There are still some huntables left on the map, and one thing that would be very appealing for VortiX is to take the boars. There is one over there on the north, there's one on the right side. Because there is absolutely no desire from DeMusliM to contest map control right now, so the boars are wide open for taking, and that would be a great source of food for VortiX. VortiX is playing this one very safe, however. You could see that every fight he takes, he's taking the safe approach. He's not overextending with his villagers either. Despite the fact that he has a huge lead, he doesn't want to throw this away, and that's a wise thing to do at this point, although he could get away with a little more greed right now. Once again, horseman numbers steadily increasing over here for DeMusliM, and it looks like this attack is going to be repelled for the time being. This is a bit of a difficult composition, at least for now, for VortiX to deal with. The answer will be men-at-arms, and they are already appearing on the battlefield. Men-at-arms will take a decent fight against the horsemen, they'll be good against the spears, they'll be good against the archers, and the Abbasids don't have a response to those men-at-arms right now. Here come the first couple of them, and those will soak up so much arrow fire. Not a lot of spears left on the battlefield either, so the knights could start thinking about taking down all those archers. These fights are as good as it gets for DeMusliM, and he's doing a pretty good job given the circumstances. In fact, it's an amazing job given the circumstances, but even an amazing job over here isn't going to be sufficient. This is his last battle here. He's going to lose his entire army, and I don't think that DeMusliM has the window to rebuild this one. He's on a full retreat, now up against Castle Age units, Castle Age knights, veteran archers, and men-at-arms. You see him taking the headset off, and with that, DeMusliM is out of N4C VortiX. Very convincing 4-1 victory here in this best of 7. Pretty much every single game that he's played, he was dominating his opponent, and boy oh boy, was that a great move. Oops. That's the wrong overlay. This is the overlay that we want to go to. 4-1 for VortiX. Great performance, very consistent, and he's definitely showing that he's still one of the candidates to potentially win the entire tournament, because what he has shown us today was exceptional level of skill. He wasn't really deviating a lot from the meta, but it was smart gameplay, very nice with the reactions, very nice with the executions, and I feel like the score is a little deceiving because DeMusliM did a lot of good things. It's just the fact that every single game, some small things started to go in the favor of VortiX, and ultimately, those things piled up, and VortiX was able to snowball most of those games. VortiX moves into the semifinals, and he takes down DeMusliM 4-1, whereas for DeMusliM, despite the fact that he got the 3rd place in the Swiss bracket, he's going to exit in the quarterfinals. He isn't going to be able to get another S-tier victory. After taking the championship in the SteelSeries Prime Cup, he's going to exit in the quarterfinals.